Nomad Podcast.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Nomad Podcast. And today I have the pleasure to talk with the wonderful Julian Liniger, the CEO of Relai. But not only that, my mom will also be finally joining me once again for today's podcast. And topic of today's podcast is, why did Relai have to go KYC? And I know this has been like a huge question currently, especially around Relai. Why did they have to go KYC? But all of that will be explained in today's episode. So let's get right into the episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nomad Podcast. And today I have the wonderful CEO of Relay joining us. Julian, would you like to introduce yourself in the first place?
Yeah, sure. Hello. I hope you can hear me. I just saw that I might be with the wrong microphone, but if the sound's okay,
It's
then
fine.
we can continue like that. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm Julian. Maybe you guys know me from Relay. I co-founded Relay a bit more than 4 years ago, the number one Bitcoin on-ramp in Europe. And yeah, based here in Switzerland. In Biel, where we just sponsored the local hockey club. I don't know if some of you maybe have seen that. We're now on the warm-up jersey, and a couple of big advertisings in the stadium. Next week is going to be the first match of this season, so that's going to be fun. Other than that, looking forward to have a great discussion here about Relay, Bitcoin, probably KYC, and another couple of uncomfortable topics. So yeah, happy to answer all the questions here.
Cool. So I usually start the podcast with, as you know, as we did the short interview in BTC Prague at the conference, right? I always start the interviews with this question: how did you get into Bitcoin? And especially for your case, what made you start your own Bitcoin-only firm? That would be, for me, that's always interesting to see how people, their thoughts on that and how they basically came up with those crazy ideas, you could argue. Because nowadays, if you're a Bitcoiner, you're looked at as a crazy person, even in our family sometimes. But yeah, what was your main motivation and idea behind Relay and getting into Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's super interesting. So for me, it first started almost 10 years ago at this point, 2015, where this friend of mine who I knew from childhood, where we went to school together, he was into technology a lot, which I was not. I was more into business, and I studied psychology, and I liked trading, stocks, finance, etc. But I was never really into technology. But this guy was, and then he introduced me to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And I just thought he thought it was fascinating from a tech point of view. I thought it was fascinating from all the other point of views, like how it could revolutionize our financial and economic and societal systems around the world. And then, yeah, well, as probably everyone else, first dismissed it a little bit and tried it out, then learned more about it, went deeper down the rabbit hole. 2016, I actually tried to participate in the ICO of Ethereum. Didn't quite work for me. It was too complicated from a tech point of view. That's why then I really became more passionate about making these things easier for people. In 2017, then I spent some time in around Silicon Valley. I did an exchange semester there, and there was this huge ICO bubble where you can make a lot of money, also lose a lot of money, but definitely learned a lot in that period. And then came back from the US 2018, started to kind of bounce around ideas on what could be improved in this very early industry still, because there was a lot to improve. There's still a lot to improve. And then I saw the biggest market opportunity basically in just making it easier for people to buy Bitcoin, like auto-save Bitcoin on the long run and have their own wallet all in one nice, simple, and user-friendly and secure Bitcoin app. And that's how this then kind of this vision was forming around this market opportunity, because I saw like so many people want to get into Bitcoin, but they can't. As I wanted to get into Ethereum in 2016, but I couldn't. It was too complicated. So I didn't want this to happen for people that want to get into Bitcoin. So I wanted to make it easier and more accessible for everyday, like just normal people out there in the streets that are, hairdressers, taxi drivers, hockey players, whatever. And then so 2019, then together with my co-founder Adam, we participated in a hackathon in one of the biggest, probably the biggest European fintech hackathon. It happened in Zurich. It's probably still happening every year in Zurich. And there, with a small group of people that kind of joined while we were doing this at the event, we built the first prototype and business model and pitch deck and like legal concept around Relay. We presented it to a jury. We got it to the ranks, probably 5th or 6th place or whatever. And so from there, we further developed this from a hobby to a project, and then from a project to a company. So in 2020, summer 2020, we then went live with the first MVP to the app stores. And now fast forward 4 years, a bit more than 4 years later, we're probably considered the biggest and leading Bitcoin on-ramp in Europe, and still true to our values, like being Bitcoin only, self-custodial, Swiss-made, secure, all-in-one, very simple, and trying to give access to Bitcoin for millions of people.
Wow, great story. I never hear it, so I learned a lot. Cool, Julian.
That's really cool. Is it then, because you said it went from a hobby to more of a now real thing, was that transition then really hard for you guys? Because when you go from a hobby to a real time firm, you also need people, right? That means, I mean, let's say it's a small firm and now it's like a big firm. That transition, but going from small to big, you need the numbers. You need, I would also argue, how would you finance that, right? Was it then hard for you guys to go from really hobby to big time?
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
That was probably the hardest part in this phase, because Adam still had his own projects where he made money. He was already self-employed. He already had his own software development agency where he did, with a couple of people, he did projects bringing blockchain, different blockchain technology projects to mobile. So that was very handy. With this background anyway in computer science, informatics, he had a PhD at the University of Bern, etc. So that he did make like his own money, and I was employed 60%. I had a 60% job. Just finished my studies. Decided not to go full time working with this consulting company, staying 60% so I could start doing my own project. I also have started a consulting company, a very small one back then. So we were both kind of involved in different projects already. But then this, Relay came about, and we really believed in this idea more and more. First did it as a hobby at evenings and weekends, etc. But then at one point you need to make this jump, right? You need to jump from, okay, this is a hobby and I can do it evenings and weekends, to no, I want to go all in there. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as, okay, I decide, and now I get all the capital, get all the people, get everything set up, and then comfortably I can transition into that. It's never like that. It's always it's always crazy and chaotic, and you need to do the jump first before you have any security, because no investor would give you money while you're still in a well-paid secure job. No, you need to first prove that like you are willing to do whatever it takes. You jump, you leave everything behind, you burn all the boats behind you, and that's what we did in as said, summer 2020. So we had a little bit of money, like ourselves, but really just a little bit, a little bit of money ourselves, and then we raised a little bit of money from 2 angel investors. With that, we built this MVP and we went live with it. And pretty much at the same day we went live with it, we had 0 customers, 0 money, anything. We went live, and we at the same time quit our jobs. So that was kind of, okay, we've burned all the boats behind us. We go all in. Maybe it works. Hopefully it works. Maybe it doesn't. But we had runway for maybe 2-3 months, not more. And in this phase, we needed to go live with the app, get first paying customers, get great feedback, get first traction, and find investors who would help us finance this and help us set up the company around it, etc. I mean, at the beginning, it was just an app, right? We just went live with an app. We didn't have a company around this, etc. So we had to build this all up in a few months. And we did go through a couple of months where we just didn't have any salary, and we were pretty close to being broke and end of runway. But that's a very hard phase, but I think it's almost necessary. Yeah, in hindsight, I was glad we did this, and that was then really when we then found some investors, first traction, first users, and then based on that, first investors. That's where it really felt like, okay, now it's becoming an actual startup, where we then had a company, we had some money on the bank, we were able to hire 2 or 3 people, and we were able to work full time on this and even pay a small salary for us. But that then, of course, felt amazing. But the couple of months between the hobby and the company phase were really, really hard. Yeah.
And if you make the transformation from hobby to a real business with investors and clients, there will come also the regulations that we still know here at this point, right? What before it was for fun, just for fun, for have you can buy Bitcoin without a KYC. That doesn't work now.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the cornerstones that we used to build the Relai concept on top. I mean, at the beginning, it was really the tagline was, okay, you can buy Bitcoin within 1 minute. You have it in a self-custodial way. You can set up a savings plan 24/7 with different payment options, etc. That all still works as a tagline, but also we used, it's no KYC. You don't even have to, give us any information, documentation. You don't have to verify, etc. Within 1 minute, couple of clicks, no data, you can just start. And that was a big USP, of course. No other provider. There were almost no other providers anyway, but those who were there, or those who emerged maybe in the next few months after we successfully hit the market, no one was able to do that. So that was a big USP, unique selling proposition, because no one else could do that. And we were able to, we always knew that at one point, they would stop it, but we were early enough so that we could profit and offer this great service to as many people as we could for a couple of years. And now in the end, it was 4 years that we were able to do it, a bit more than 4 years. And now, unfortunately, it has come to an end. So the regulators have, noticed, and they don't like it, and now they are applying stricter regulations and measurements on top of us. It was all legal, it is still now to a certain degree legal in Switzerland. It's not going to be legal anymore in the EU from next year on, once MiCA is into place. MiCA, all these frameworks, they didn't exist 4 years ago. Now they do, and so this is just the step-by-step, rather slow, the rather strict process that regulators apply to these innovations that they don't necessarily know, or don't necessarily fit into their systems and approaches, where they want to, of course, apply their authority, their control, etc. So step by step, these companies like ours are being more regulated, and more KYC, AML verification, etc. Data collection from users is required. And so now, after these 4 years, we had a good run with this no KYC thing, but now it comes to an end, both in the EU anyway, and 80% of our user base already comes from EU countries. So anyway, the biggest part of the business is going full KYC anyway, because if we want to be live in these countries. And even in Switzerland now, they are becoming more strict, kind of aligning more with the EU regulations, and therefore also with the Swiss regulators, we now have come to the agreement that if we want to continue to do business, we basically need to also verify all the Swiss users, and that's what we are now in the process of doing until the end of this year.
Yeah, you can't get around KYC. Eventually it will hunt us forever. You know, it will come from all. You know, I always had this discussion with people at the conferences. KYC is so bad, and well, yeah, well, I know it's bad. I don't like it either, but there's no way around it. Eventually, there will be a KYC implemented, especially if we now have the big guys like BlackRock, JP Morgan, all these firms now suddenly. I mean, even what's his name from Dell, the CEO of Dell. All these people are now interested into Bitcoin, and they also want to implement Bitcoin as a payment method. You know what? Of course, you then have some KYC happening there. It's nothing that you really can't get around with, you know, around, you know. So
yeah, it's I mean, maybe very niche cases like certain offline methods, like you meet someone and you pay cash, get Bitcoin from this person. That still works, still kind of no KYC. And then
peer-to-peer.
Peer-to-peer online as well. You know, there's things like BISC and HODL. There's stuff like CoinJoin where you can de-KYC somehow your Bitcoin. There are and will always be ways, but it's I think it's gonna develop similar to the internet. The internet also started like very from a crypto anarchy mindset, where it was all envisioned as this peer-to-peer decentralized network that is anonymous or at least very privacy focused and no KYC, etc. And it was this at the beginning, and is still now kind of can be used like this if you use Tor or other tools like Darknet, etc. But it's definitely the niche. Like 99% of the whole traffic is probably more, probably 99.9% of all the traffic is going through the internet, which is now very very supervised, very controlled, very KYC'd in the end, and dominated by the regulators, the governments, and the big techs. And unfortunately, I think that's probably what will happen to Bitcoin as well. There will always be the chance for people who want that, put the effort into it, to use it as this privacy-oriented peer-to-peer decentralized network that is outside of the regulated fiat money system. But a big part, the biggest part of it will be that, and therefore we also kind of, as a company, there's almost no way to make considerable business and reach a certain scale if you are not adhering to the regulators and try to work with them. And so that's kind of the strategy we have.
It's like data is power, and hence if data is power, power is then equal to money. For me, I always make those connections that if data is power, then power is also money, right? And data is money. For me, it's the only, I think personally, I'm not sure if it's true, but the only reason for me is that we have KYC is because of the money produced by it, the data that produces that money, which then the state uses for whatever they wanted to use it. At least for me, I'm not sure how you see it, but for me, it's always like data is power, and hence power is also money, So data equals money. At least that's what I think and see.
In the end, it's all about power and control. And if you have a lot of data and information of what people are doing at scale, then you have control over them, and that's what they sometimes show. For example, they now just arrested. Now he's free again. I think that they arrested Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram. They knew exactly where he was, what he was doing. Even though he's he's concerned with his privacy, of course, a lot, and he has some power. He's a billionaire, so he can't do that. But still, the governments have so much information that at any point in time, if they want to, they can just get you and put you in jail. So and this, sometimes they kind of do these small things to show that guys, we're still in control. We have all the power. We have all the data. And unfortunately, that's how they operate. But I think if we can separate money and state, and then reduce the size of the state through political actions that are happening more and more, then we still have a chance to. We need to push back, right? But it's unfortunately the world that we live in right now.
they don't want to have the separation of state and money. That's the point. And the KYC reason for me, in my opinion, is to tax people. That's the only reason. If they know where do you have, or where did you buy your Bitcoin, for example, or where do you have your wealth, your money, they want to tax you at the end. That's the only reason why they implemented AMLA, the Anti-Money Laundering Authority. They had the ID in July 2021 in the middle of the lockdowns. So that was simply clear that they want to have the power and the control.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Why do they
isn't
want to
the
reduce
reason,
cash, right?
the anti-money thing. That's a joke. That's really a joke. That's my
They
opinion.
sell it as it was to fight criminal activities like terrorist financing, etc. But in the end, this is such a small, like what's happening there is so small. So it's probably less than 1% of all the money flows is due to criminal activities, and those that actually are happening, they are not catching with their measures like the KYC, AML stuff. The most of that is happening, which is a small point. They don't even catch it. But what they of course get is full control, full visibility, so they can tax more and increase the state even more, which is what worries me. The trend is that the regulators, the authorities, the governments are becoming bigger and bigger, and they want to get bigger and bigger. That's why they want to get rid of cash as well, so they can tax even more. And of course, COVID was great for that. They could get rid of a lot of cash and bring a lot of people into digital payment methods that they can fully control. Now they want to even improve that with CBDCs. And so in the end, it's true what you say, and it's the more data they have, the more power they have, the more tax they can collect, the bigger they can get, and it's definitely worrying. It worries me as like a libertarian thinker, and so we need to find things to push back. And for example, as a company, we always try. Still now, we don't give in and just do whatever they say, or we are trying to minimize always what we have to do in terms of KYC, AML, and registrations, etc. Of course, we do what is necessary so that we can stay into business, bring self-custodial Bitcoin to as many people as possible. That's our number one goal. But also, we want to minimize it so that we can, offer this very user-friendly, very simple service to people, and not that they freak out, and not that they have to give up more of their data than they need.
Yeah, I always compare it to I always say that if people trust the government fully and basically transfer all their power, because we the people, we have the power, because we can vote those politicians, right? Though I'm sometimes I'm skeptical if those if there's not like voter fraud happening in our elections, but I always say that when we transfer power to the state, we have already lost. And for me, when I then see projects like Bitcoin, which were invented to take back that power, right? It always gives me a feeling like at the end of the tunnel, there is a light, but that light is slowly going darker by each day if we people don't start acting. And I think for me, Bitcoin is the perfect act. I always compare it to a opera, always at the opera, the end act at the opera, like where eventually you have this beautiful ballet dancer. Nutcracker, for example, is the perfect example. At the end, Nutcracker and her, the princess, meet again in a real world, and then that's the end. For me, it's always like that. We have the real world and we have this fantasy world. The fantasy world is sometimes a sad truth, but also can be good, because then you realize what's actually going on in the world, right? So, sorry, it's a weird example, but for me, it's always the best example.
It does
but
work.
I was just thinking, people are at risk, at their own risk, especially nowadays, when they invest time and energy into Bitcoin, into crypto in general, into Ethereum, into shitcoins, aka stablecoins, right? I think I also asked you that in Prague at the conference, but how do you address that as the company, as Relay, that people should be aware of these risks and that risk when investing time and energy into things like Bitcoin, right? Or even buying Bitcoin? What should they be aware of? And especially now also with KYC and AMLA and all those things going on in the world, how do you address that essentially? Through social media, through conferences, through going live on stage, addressing that in that sense, So yeah, how do you address that?
I think education should always come first, and not like speculation or whatever. A lot of people are just buying Bitcoin quickly without thinking about it, without getting educated, because maybe their neighbors did or their friends tell them about it, or the price is going up like crazy and all the media write about it. So I need to get into Bitcoin right now as well. It's good that they get into Bitcoin, but they get into it for the wrong reasons, and so they are basically paper hands at the beginning. So they will also sell when they buy because it's up 10% and they want it to go up 100%, but then once it bounces back 10 or 15%, they sell again with a loss. So that doesn't make sense. I think all of the education is very important. You don't need to spend hundreds of hours. The more you invest time, the better, of course. But also the more comfortable you feel, and the better your sleep while you're doing this. The less you get educated, the more it's like stressful because of the volatility, etc. But yeah, in the end, you just need to invest some time, a couple of hours, and that's also why we are investing a lot into, like, number one investment for us is the product, but number two is communication, education, content. We do a lot of social media, a lot of information on our website. We have a newsletter, we have a blog, we have podcasts. We do whatever we can to get folks educated. And I think that's very important. There, of course, all sorts of risk. There's the volatility. There's the information aspect that you said. But nothing is really. I don't think Bitcoin in the end is a riskier like financial instrument than other like fintech apps, neobanks or traditional banks or investment products or brokers or whatever. I mean, in the end, it's pretty much the same. I would even argue it's less risky, because if you get educated and you learn how to take care of the private keys yourself, you don't have the counterparty risk, for example, which is a big one in every financial tool that you're using in the fiat world, right? So in the end, I would argue that it's more user friendly, even less volatile. If you compare to most assets on the long run, in 10 years, it's less volatile. It's less risk of losing money. There is no counterparty risk. You can hold it yourself. There's a lot of open source material. It is open source itself, and there's a lot of open source material and great education around it. So yeah, I think if it's the only financial instrument where, with a decent amount of time invested into educating yourself, that really becomes very low risk for people. And I think more and more people are starting to understand it, and therefore allocate more of their wealth or income to it, because in the long run, there's nothing that's really less risky if you do the work around it than Bitcoin.
Yeah. That's the same thing I educate to my clients. So Bitcoin is on a long game. If you make TCA, for example, with Relay, or if you hodl your Bitcoin in your own hardware wallet, so it is on the same level as real estate in the long game. So I even don't think that then Bitcoin is a risk investment. Yes, for short, for day trading, of course, we have a lot of volatility, but not in the long game. No. That is the thing that people have to understand and to change their mind about the risk of investments, for example, Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I mean, also with this whole KYC thing, that's also always a risk, because people have to be careful how they answer the questions. I mean, I had so many friends which had like certain, Bitcoin apps where you buy Bitcoin, but also exchanges and all those apps. They had to do KYC, right? Of course, you have to do KYC there. And then they didn't answer the questions all correctly, and the exchanger and the apps and all those essentially said, "Hey, we can't give you the account because
Yeah.
you didn't answer those questions correctly." And then we're like, "Oh, that's so unfair." Like, well, read through the questions carefully, answer them correctly, and there you go. You have no problems. And I think also with people educating themselves nowadays, that has become a big how should I say it? Not trouble, but people are too lazy to do that anymore. They always want someone to take care of it for themselves. They don't want people. They don't want to do it themselves. They just want people to do it for them. I think also that's a problem when we talk about education, that people need to sit down and listen to this talk for half an hour, even if it's boring, or if you don't like the talk for half an hour. If there are certain political figures, like let's say we have JFK Jr. on the stage, and you don't like him and he talks about Bitcoin, well, at least listen to him, because maybe what he's saying has sort of truth behind it. But for
Yeah, I
me,
think
that's the main problem, that people are too lazy to educate themselves nowadays.
this is a problem for sure, but the other problem then is the counterparty risk. So who do you trust to take care of your money? And I think then it becomes like, if that becomes too risky for people, which now, for example, for people living in Switzerland, I think we all have roots in Switzerland here, right? So people living in Switzerland now, they have PostFinance, the third biggest bank now in Switzerland. With I think 2.5 million clients, and like they're huge. They have a state guarantee, so nothing can really. I mean, of course, a lot can still happen, because per account it's only 100K. That's what is usually insured. That's a lot of people don't know that, but they now are offering Bitcoin, and so for a lot of people that's like fair enough. It's a good counterparty, right? Not a lot can happen, even if shit hits the fan. So to certain degree, you do have the security. But with, for example, if in other countries, with other counterparties, like how many crypto exchanges have blown up, FTX, for example, people have lost their money in Gemini and Celsius and all that shit that happened there. Then you do wonder, does it make sense? Even if you don't want to do the work, but does it make sense to do a little bit of work? And it doesn't seem to be super complicated to do your own thing. So I think the more people lose trust in these financial institutions, which is a clear trend, especially millennials, like the more years go by, the less they do trust in counterparties, financial counterparties, and the more the simpler it gets to do self-custody, which is also a trend. It gets much simpler. The education is getting much better, etc. So these are two trends that clearly point you to the direction. Which we also see is that more people take care of their own private keys. More people withdraw their Bitcoin from exchanges and hold them themselves. Relai and other self-custodial wallets, brokers, Bitcoin apps, they get more and more traction, more and more users. So clearly the trend is going to the direction where people don't really trust these financial counterparties anymore and want to take care of their own Bitcoin. And that's why we believe we're exactly in the right niche with being Bitcoin only and self-custodial and regulated in Switzerland and soon in France, and like the very renowned and trusted regulations. Is, I think, the best way for people to think about it. Because as you said, also to your point before, where people have to go through all this verification and answer all these questions, and for custodial exchanges much more even than for non-custodial exchanges that we are. So they have to give up all their data and tell basically everyone how much, or these counterparties, how much they earn, whether or not they are qualified investors. Like this is all getting tested, and there's a big profile on every customer. Now you make maybe some money, you always have it there, right? You put money, you invested in Bitcoin, it goes up, you put more money, it goes up and up and up, and then after a couple of years you want to withdraw. they can always, freeze for a moment. And that's happening to a lot of Relai private clients, high net worth individuals that we get are coming. Like, they take away all their money from centralized exchanges and come to us because we help them to take care of their own private keys and do self-custodial Bitcoin, because they want to know, like, if Bitcoin goes up 10x, they want to be able to use it. They want to be able to send it around. They want to have control over it. They want to be able to exchange it to fiat again or buy something with it, etc. And now with a lot of custodial exchanges, basically they say, oh, you now have 500,000 here and you want to withdraw all of it? No, wait. Before you can do that, you have to fill in this form and this signature, and we need this information, and we need you to hop on a video call, etc. So you cannot really use your Bitcoin, use your money, at least temporary, and sometimes not at all if they want to. If you're on some sort of a list, there's a lot of lists that people don't know they are actually on, like PEP, for example, politically exposed person. And there's so many such like sanctions lists, depending on what origins you have, maybe depending on what company you worked for, depending on what country you travel to. Like you'd be very surprised how many lists there are. And if you're on one of these lists and you use a custodial exchange, well, it will be effort to get your money out. And so that's why these are a lot of reasons that people are just getting familiar with, reasons why you want to have your Bitcoin self-custody.
Cool.
At the end, it's all about control, Julian, as you now said. But the most important point is that a lot of people, yes, they understand now I can't trust in centralized finance institution for a couple of reasons. But the most important thing is to trust for yourself. And that's the point where we have in our business every day most of trouble. They don't trust in themselves because they didn't learn it. They never learned at school or in their life how can I use my money, or how can I protect my money. They only learned I'm working, I pay taxes, I bring my money to the bank, and the bank will do the best. But they never do the best for their clients. They do the best for themselves. And that is the point which most of people have to understand. And there is that's the most difficult point in this self-custody thing.
I agree, but then I think maybe as a Bitcoin community, we need to also switch gear a bit and not be too, put too much pressure on these people, because they're only just getting into it, right? And then we tell them, look, you now have half a Bitcoin and you need to write down these words and you need to these 12 words and you need to now buy a stick and you put it on there, and then but you really keep these words, because if you lose it, everything is lost. And like that, this freaks people out, right? Maybe we should switch gear and talk more on the positive side of things, like talk about it as an opportunity to kind of go for, and not a problem that they need to solve. It's an opportunity. Like, of course, you can have your Bitcoin with your bank if you want, with crypto exchange, but if you have it in a self-custodial way, these are the benefits you get, right? This is it's a really cool thing to be able to travel around the world with basically 12 words in your head, and knowing you have half Bitcoin with you and you can go anywhere. It's 24/7. It's the most liquid asset. So 24/7, you can always, exchange to any other currency, or you can more and more, you can also buy things with it everywhere. There are Bitcoiners everywhere that, you can get connected, and there's like these economies everywhere where you can use your Bitcoin, and basically you are free because you have your money. There are no limitations, no restrictions, and you don't have to be scared of the next Credit Suisse or FTX or whatever blow up. That certainly is going to happen again. You don't have to be scared that anyone is printing away the value of your money. You don't have to be scared that maybe if you make a good return, you cannot withdraw your money, or you will have to as we discussed before, give up on all these documents, etc., before you can get the money. You are free if you have self-custodial Bitcoin. You have your wealth with you, and you are free. And so that, I think, will motivate maybe more people to do it, hopefully.
Well, that's a cool end statement, I would say, for this episode. I just have one more question. You mentioned Mika before, the Mika license, and currently, people who have a English phone, aka or live in the UK or just are in the UK, they can't download Relay on their UK phone, right? Because of the licenses and all that stuff. So, will you then get the Mika license? And once you get the Mika license, will I be able, for example, to download Relay also on my UK phone,
Yeah,
not
it's a
just on
great
my Swiss
question.
phone?
Unfortunately, this will require even another step. So, currently we have a Swiss company with a Swiss license, so we can actively target the Swiss market. We can only passively target the EU market, and we cannot target the UK market at all. Now, that's why we did this next step of creating a Swiss holding with a Swiss, operational company that has the Swiss license, and that's for the Swiss market. Now we are just in the process of founding a French company, which will then get the French license towards the end of this year. And then we can target the French market. In Q1 next year, this will be transitioned into a Mika license, because that's when Mika will go live. And then with this French company, which is called Relay EU, we can then target the whole EU market actively. So we will be back in all the app stores in all the EU countries. Unfortunately, not in the UK, because they did the Brexit. They're not part of the EU, so Mika also doesn't directly apply to them. This will require another step, which will be founding another company, which is called then Relay UK, probably in London, and then get the UK license there, and then we can be back in the UK markets. And that's what we will then do step by step. Like, we now have the game plan, right, and the structure in place where we can just we have this blueprint. It works, going from Switzerland to the EU, and then to the UK, then to other jurisdictions around the world. So that's the plan, the game plan for the next 10 years. That's how we will scale to hopefully becoming a global company and cover as much territory as possible.
But when you then if you would then get the UK license, would you then be international, basically? Or is that just for the UK only?
It's always local jurisdictions, So you need a license for Switzerland, you need a license for the EU,
my gosh.
you need a license for the UK, and then you need a license for the US, and then you need a license for, and then it gets complicated, because there are always there are single countries. So in the EU, there are now, I think, 44 different countries. Fortunately, we have the Mika, because we can get one that allows us to get one license in one country, and then it's enough to cover all these 44 countries, because they're all in the EU. It's an EU license. That's great. UK the same, so we don't need a license for England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. We have one license then for all of this. That's already good. And then they're similar, for example, in the Arab states. You don't need to have one license for every emirate. You can have one license that probably either in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or Riyadh, that basically then covers most of the Arab states. But then also for the US, you can have one license that covers all the states. Then Asia, for example, I'm not even sure. You can have a Hong Kong license or a Singapore license, but that will probably not cover, at least will certainly not cover whole Asia, right? So you need to have always different licenses, but we can be happy that it's not like country by country. There are always these conglomerates of different nations that you can cover with one license, and then it's just all about finding out what the most efficient way is moving forward. Ideally getting as few licenses as possible, but cover as much territory as possible. That's what worked very well with the EU now. It will work well with the UK. And then what's next, we'll need to see in a year or two.
Okay, cool. So people, This was another episode of Noma Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it was a lot of information, but that's always good to have more information than rather less information. Julian, social media wise, where are you on social media, and where's Relay on? Are you on Twitter? Are you on Instagram? Are you on LinkedIn? Where can people find you?
Pretty much these three are the biggest ones. I would say on Twitter or X, we have the biggest following, both Relay and myself. So catch us there. We're also open for DMs. LinkedIn is probably number 2, and Instagram as well. And we're also on Nostr. At least Relay is quite active on Nostr. I'm a bit less active, but I'm on there. So probably best to catch us on Twitter or X.
Okay, cool. So we'll link that down below. So people, this was another episode. I hope you enjoyed it, as I said before. Thank you, Julian, again for joining us for a second time, because this is actually not the first time, it's the second time. I will also link the other episode down below. That was a very, very interesting short episode we did in BTC Prague. But for me, it was fun, especially at the end where I said... Christine Lagarde. I'm not sure if you remember that that part, but that was my favorite part out of the whole interview. But people, have a nice time. Thank you, Julian, again for joining us, and see you soon. Hopefully, see you in Lugano. I'm not sure if you. I think you should be in Lugano.
Absolutely.
Okay, so see you in Lugano, mate. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Nomad Podcast.